Welcome to Vision Pros, the show all about spatial computing, Vision OS, and getting work done on the Apple Vision Pro. I'm Tim Chatton, host of the show.
I've never been like a mini player person on my computer but it really makes sense in the Vision Pro to say, I have my music and I'm just going to take the small controls and put them off to the side. So I know where they are when I want them, but, they don't need to be in front of me all the time. So if you look at the artwork and the playing bar and tap there, it actually switches to a mini player.
Welcome back to another episode of Vision Pros. We're joined in this episode by Kevin Pfefferle, who is a web developer. And in this episode, we dive into his experiences with the first week with the Apple Vision Pro. This episode is recorded the Wednesday after release, and just like the last episode, this episode is a more exploratory episode where we just bounce our general thoughts of using the device back and forth. Stay tuned for some app-focused episodes in the future with different developers I'm in contact with and excited to share more about soon. As a reminder, you can support the podcast over at visionpros.fm/Patreon. By subscribing to the Patreon or Apple Podcast, you'll get episodes early, and my sincere thanks to everyone that supports the podcast. It means a great deal and is very, very much appreciated. With that, here's my discussion with Kevin. Enjoy. Welcome to the podcast, Kevin.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. So this is our second episode post-launch of Apple Vision Pro being here. And as of the time of recording it, we've had it, about five days? It's Wednesday, week after. I'm not sure what that, yeah.
I'm probably pretty close to 5 days. Mine came Friday afternoon, so.
Yeah, nice. So yours was just shipped to the house and...
Yeah, I obviously wear glasses. You can see that. But, so I was waiting on the optical inserts, and I wasn't sure how that would work for like in-store pickup if I didn't have the inserts with me. So I just figured getting everything hand-delivered to me all at once was probably the safer bet.
Yeah. I had a couple hours of just waiting for UPS to give me those lenses because I did the in-store pickup and then, come on UPS, let me get the rest of it here. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it was interesting though. I think you had a photo where they like scanned your glasses to at least like give you temporary.
Yeah, so in store, the whole thing. They scan your glasses that you bring with you, which I had like, can you just give me this lenses? It's like, no, we don't even know what diopters we're giving you in these lenses for privacy reasons. So they scan the lenses. The machine spits out like the lenses that are scanned, and they don't know anything about the lenses. Because I guess
that's really interesting.
Yeah, I don't care about that data, but I guess some people would. How bad your eyes are, but yeah. So you got yours Friday afternoon.
Yes.
What's your background and work like, and how do you anticipate this fitting into your life?
Yeah. So my professionally, I work as a front end software engineer. Building web applications.
Okay.
So I am a software engineer. I do write code every day, but primarily things that are running in the browser. Over the years, I've dabbled in iOS development a lot, especially with being a front-end focused software engineer for web applications. User interface, user interaction, how you're helping the user achieve what they're trying to do is something that's really important to me and I really value a lot. So that is obviously something Apple as a company values very highly and has always drawn me to their products. So I've dabbled in iOS development here and there. I've had the iPhone since the 3G. Since iPhone 3. No, 3G. iPhone 3G.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's 3G and 3GS. There was no iPhone 3 technically, I guess.
Yeah. iPad since day one, Apple Watch since day one, all the things. But when the Vision Pro was announced, we've had these rumors for a couple of years about this headset that could be coming that could let you view things in real space. Obviously, Apple's been very heavily invested in building out augmented reality for like the iPad and the iPhone, which I think was also a signal of maybe where this stuff was going. And I have a particular personal hobby that I've been involved with over the years that is outside of my professional line of work, that just really lends itself really well to the idea that you can see things from a real world perspective,
Mm-hmm.
and model them before trying to put them into the real world. Um, so the Vision Pro really kickstarted me into really pursuing that idea. Um, so I have since the announcement of the Vision Pro, I actually was immediately like, okay, I need to start building some of the interface for this thing. So I actually started out building on the iPad because I didn't have access to a Vision Pro, and was occasionally opening things in the Vision Pro simulator, but I could just tell, like, I had no idea how this was going to fit, and I had plenty of things I needed to build that weren't reliant on the Vision Pro hardware yet. Um, and then knew that once the Vision Pro showed up and I could actually feel it and get a sense for how people were building applications for it, obviously some of these early apps that are available certainly seems like a lot of these developers had dev kits, like they've obviously experienced their application inside the device. So now that we get that opportunity as well, it's exciting to think about where we can go from there to build applications for the Vision Pro.
Yeah, because you're in the middle of the country, so you're not exactly close to New York or Cupertino, where the American labs were.
Correct. If I had an existing iPad application and then was like porting it into the Vision Pro, I could have seen like it being worth the flight. Um, the My day job company is actually in New York City, so I do go to New York City a couple times a year. So I did like float the idea a little bit
Yeah.
of could I align like a work trip with a
Exactly. Yeah.
developer lab, but ultimately I just decided, you know what, I'm just going to crank on building the core of the application I'm going to need, whether it's on the iPad or on the Vision Pro, and then wait for the Vision Pro to show up to really dial in the rest of it.
Can you share at all what the core app is or does, or is it too early?
It I will share this. I'm essentially working on a 3-year plan. So I I'm also taking the approach that um, the Vision Pro as it currently exists kind of feels like a pricey dev kit, but as has been quoted before, this is the worst Vision Pro we're ever going to have. So 2 years from now, 3 years from now, as the device gets better, hopefully gets cheaper,
Mm-hmm.
maybe a non-pro version that's more accessible to more people. The audience that I'm trying to build for is not really an audience that's going to pick this up for $3,500 to
Sure.
play around with it. Like they're going to need to be sold on it farther down the line. So I'm kind of building with that in mind.
Mm-hmm.
But what really excites me, I don't want to get into too many specifics. I hate when people do that, but I am trying to supplant somebody in a kind of niche industry where there's one key player in what I'm trying to build, and I don't want them knowing, and it's a small enough community that once people start talking about it, they'll be aware.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
so that's where I'm at. But I'm looking a few years down the road at how can I be better positioned than them 2 or 3 years from now.
Gotcha. And getting the Vision Pro on your head, on your face.
Yes.
How was it different, if it was different, from your expectations based on the June 5th keynote and hearing all the ramp up stories about it?
Um, I I think there are ways in which I underestimated and overestimated it, depending on which aspect you're talking about. I think I overestimated what the world around you was going to look like in a fidelity sense. You know, I I have a teenager and a toddler, so I do appreciate the remaining grounded in your own context. I had uh, a it was called an Oculus Quest at the time, now
Yes.
a Meta Quest.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoyed using it for certain things, but I felt like I could only use it in scenarios where I was already in the room by myself and nobody else was around
Yeah, you
me.
go to a VR
And
gaming session, and it's like I'm going away to my den for a bit, and watch out, I might hit
exactly.
you if you're in here.
Yeah. Or like, my wife would take a work trip and kids would be in bed, and I'd be like, okay, well, now's a great time to do VR because nobody needs me,
Exactly. Yeah.
But I the Vision Pro, the way that it lets me stay in the room with my family, and I know they've been pushing that a lot in the ads, and that always felt a little questionable to me, but it really does let you stay in the room if you choose to. And the fact that I've been able to like sit at the kitchen table and play around with apps and things, and when my toddler runs up to me, like I can look at her and she interacts with me and she still feels like I'm there.
Yeah.
It actually is kind of a magical experience as compared to the VR experiences that we've largely had available to this point. Um, so but the optical quality of like looking at your phone while you're wearing it,
Yeah.
you can make things out, you can read it, but like you wouldn't want to be doing that for any length of time.
No, like it's much better than like PSVR 2, for instance, which doesn't really work at all. Yeah, halfway. What I would do with PSVR 2, I'd have the accessibility feature where I yank the text size as maximum, and then I could make it work.
Yeah, for sure. So some of that, it maybe didn't live up to expectations, but the 3D content that's been really optimized for this device is kind of mind blowing to me. I think it has exceeded my expectations, and that's something that is hard, if not impossible, to capture in a promo video or a commercial or even a WWDC keynote. So watching
by 3D content, do you mean both videos as well as apps like JigSpace and other apps that take advantage of 3D assets?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, JigSpace is wow, but yeah, I mean, Apple's immersive content is really impressive, but also just like movies that were already made for 3D. Watching those in the Vision Pro, the crispness and brightness and colors in those movies is far above and beyond even like going to a specialty theater to see them.
I was just laughing and giggling just at some of the 3D things. It's just like, wow. It's just on another level. It really is. And it was interesting. I was listening to Screen Time, Sigmund and Devin. Evidently, Disney Plus, their downloads are super high resolution. Over 20 gigabytes for Avatar 2 in 3D. That same download on Apple TV, if you buy it there, is 13. So
oh, wow.
I believe Disney is giving you a much higher bit rate, I believe. Maybe it's 2K downloads on Apple TV and 4K through Disney. I'm not exactly sure, but significantly better bit rates there for Disney Plus, which is interesting and a reason to opt for the ad-free plan where you can download that stuff for the plane.
Yeah. I've been really impressed. My wife right away when I started putting it on, she's like, "That's so Ready Player One." So of course that was the first movie I watched in 3D.
Yeah. How old is your toddler?
She is 2.5.
What was her reaction? Because I've been actually surprised. So I've got a little bit over a 1-year-old. Devin has a even younger child, and the baby reaction so far has been curiosity and not crying. Which my daughter did cry when I was in the PSVR 2 one time. So, yeah. So it's been a positive reaction on your end as well?
Yeah, she interacts with me honestly like I'm wearing ski goggles. It feels like the first time she walked up to me and really paid attention to the fact I was wearing it, I was looking right at her, and when you're wearing it, you don't actually know what anybody looking at you is seeing.
Yeah, I have no idea in the dark. Like, is it sensing a person there in the dark? I don't know.
Yeah. But she walked up to me and I said, she was looking me right in the eye, and I said, "Do you see Daddy's eyes?" And she's like, "Daddy's eyes," and was like pointing right at my eyes, And I was like, well, that's really cool. Like that is actually like a cool like special moment with your kid for them to actually acknowledge that they feel like they're still seeing you.
Yeah.
Even though you're wearing this device on your face.
Yeah. My dog, I had to speak and say it's okay because at first she thought a stranger had entered the house, and I said, No, Sierra, it's me. And then she was all happy. Video capture from the headset's been kind of fun, especially with my cat. My cat loves to try to knock over cups, and I can hold the cup with both my hands and have her go like head first into this big cup and capture this crazy video that otherwise this cup's gonna be on the ground and it's kind of awkward to capture with an iPhone in your hand. Like hands-free capture, it's been really kind of nice. And I love the little plus sign if you want to do a video that's stationary as they advise. It makes it really easy to do that. That's been, I think, great.
Yeah, I haven't done a lot of video capture on the device, but I've really enjoyed watching the videos that I captured on my phone. My 15 Pro. Like we had some snow here a few weeks ago, and my kids were out back sledding on the hill. So I was like, this feels like like the sort of moment I should capture, spatially. So, one of the first videos I watched on the Vision Pro was my daughters sledding down the hill coming at me, and like then my toddler, at the end, like looking up and saying hi daddy and things. And I'm like, that moment is the way it captures the moment, like is bringing me to tears a bit, 2 weeks later. Like I can't even imagine like years from now looking back at that moment when she's grown significantly and I'm seeing her as a toddler in that three-dimensional way.
Yeah, I'm so blown away with the iPhone captures because there's not a whole lot of separation there, but for stuff that's pretty close, it's doing a really good job with that separation. I don't know what magic they're doing, and that's only going to get better next year with the 16, I'm sure, and inspire me to try to upgrade my phone because it'll do maybe 2K spatial instead of 1080p. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, I've convinced my wife to keep us both on the iPhone upgrade train every year, if only because you always will have the best mobile camera available to take pictures of your kids.
Yes, yeah. So, as a web developer, have you started using the Vision Pro to? Are you able to develop web stuff from your Mac? Is that and are you bringing your Mac into the headset to do any work in?
Yeah, I can. In that regards, it mostly just serves as a big display. Um, I think that's going to have most value for me when I'm traveling, because, often traveling, I'm just hunched over my laptop. So being able to pull up a big display on,
And you don't
on a
have to
plane or even in
bend
a hotel
over
room.
and try to, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Um, I haven't been using it too much for my day work. Um, the one interesting thing about building an app that's kind of targeting iPad and then extending to the Vision Pro is that as much as I would love to develop in the Vision Pro when I'm developing for the iPad, you run into that looking at a screen through a camera issue that you run into with the iPhone, where like you go to run something on the iPad and like, well, now I'm not really seeing it that well through the Vision Pro. So I've taken to a pattern of developing with the iPad next to me without the Vision Pro, and then getting it kind of whatever I'm working on, getting it dialed in on the iPad, and then launching it into the Vision Pro and putting the Vision Pro on and doing the Vision Pro development inside the Vision Pro.
Okay, yeah, because I was wondering too, like you could run the iPad app in the Vision Pro with the compatibility mode. Probably less than
Yeah.
ideal to just get a feel on the touchiness of it, though.
Yeah, especially when you're testing interactions and things. So I'm doing quite a bit of like direct manipulation, touching, and for me, for that, the device is obviously required.
Right,
So
absolutely, yeah. Have there been any standout third-party apps that you've really taken to so far?
yeah, I will say, let's see, I actually made a list ahead of time because I figured you were going to ask me
Yeah.
about apps. Um, I've been super impressed. I mean, obviously, Apple's been pushing like the black box, which is fun. It's a kind of a new take on that idea. Um, there's been a lot of really good, solid ports of things of iPad apps that I use, but those maybe are not yet leveraging the Vision Pro as
Mm-hmm.
much as they could. The one that's really wowed me that I was kind of blew me away is Moog Galaxy. So Moog, the synthesizer company, has built this vision-based synthesizer app, and it is really cool. When you first open it, it brings like a small platform of a synthesizer in front of you, and you can adjust like a few sliders to play with it, and it's got this three-dimensional visualization going on in front of you. But then if you click this expand button, it takes you into an immersive synthesizer environment. And then you've got a whole bunch of additional controls, and there's like a virtual keyboard in front of you that you can play by like looking at the key you want to start with, and then once you pinch your fingers, you can move up and down the keyboard.
Does it let
It's
you
got like
directly tap on individual keys if you wanted to, or is it you start someplace
I
and drag?
it seems like they're focused more on like the look at what you want to
Hmm.
do, and then so that they're not trying to do like you know, I haven't tried the DJ app yet, but I kind of understand that that's been doing a little more direct
Right.
manipulation. They seem focused. Moog seems focused on the look at what you want to do and then manipulate it from there, which kind of seems to be more of the pattern that Apple's kind of trying to
Yeah,
steer
they
a
definitely
lot of
are.
us towards. Um, but they do open up pads to the side that can control recording and all sorts of additional things. So they clearly think that there's an opportunity in this environment for people to be recording samples that they may actually use in their productions and things.
That's pretty cool. And I'm curious when Logic and Final Cut Pro will make their way as native apps over here. I'm sure that will be at some point.
Yeah, it seems like a really interesting environment for, I mean, really anything creative. Uh, Being able to do it in a dedicated space with, you know, your controls aren't limited by like the physical
Yeah.
orientation of things. Um, it's neat to see even this early on that sort of innovation, and I just you have to imagine it's only going to get crazier as people start to see what other developers are doing and play off of those ideas and remix them into new things.
Yeah, it's early days and it's fun to see the experimentation going on. Just last night, I was using just the LumaFusion iPad app in Vision OS, and that worked surprisingly well just by looking. And I had my external keyboard, but just by using eyes to drag clips into the timeline and all that. Yeah. Any iPad apps that you're finding just work really well here that aren't even optimized for Vision OS yet?
I mean, I've been using Ivory quite a bit.
Yeah.
Part of that is my, you know, previous Twitter obsession that has spilled over into a Mastodon obsession. But it's just, you know, I have to check on it every so often. So that one's been working really well. The I'm super thankful that 1Password made their iPad app available inside the application
Yeah, both
because
the old and new one. So you can get 7
yeah,
or the new one. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, because I very quickly realized that I'd have trouble even logging into anything without 1Password running on the device. So I'm glad that they didn't, you know, insist on waiting till they could test it on device. There's some weirdness with that one. Like, it doesn't seem like the two-factor auth code pasting works super well yet. So um, it does like the keyboard when the keyboard pops up, if you're trying to log into something, it does like give you the suggestion similar like you'd see on the iPad or the iPhone to autofill. But when you do it on the iPad or the iPhone, if you have a two-factor auth code, it will like copy that to the clipboard so that when you get to that screen, you can just paste it in. And that doesn't seem to be quite working in Vision OS for whatever reason. So I end up in those scenarios like opening the 1Password app and moving it off to the side and copying it out. But
Yeah.
you know, once you get the feel for copy paste, it's not too bad for a week one experience. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
It is fun with LumaFusion. I was doing the video export. You just throw the window somewhere in the corner while it's exporting, which is just that part. Just
Yeah,
it's great to just be able to have all this space and to just hide windows around. Uh,
yeah. Go wait over there in the corner.
exactly. Yeah. Have one experience I've had is I've had windows like I leave downstairs and I need to bring them back upstairs and I recenter everything and they're like still below me a bit. I'm trying to grab it and it's a bit hard to reposition it. How has window management in general been for you?
I'm maybe a little bit of a different case in that sort of regard. So I'm the kind of person that like doesn't have unread emails in my inbox and like doesn't leave browser tabs open, you know. So I at least so far it's very rare for me to have more than two or three windows open anywhere. And then when I'm done with them, I tend to close them. And then when I go somewhere else, I reopen those applications and situate them for that space. So I haven't had too much of a problem with that. I've had once or twice where I just don't know where a window is. And
Yeah,
I'm
you
like,
tell
it must
Siri
be,
to open
yeah.
X app, and it's open. I don't know where it's open though, because it's like back at the old place. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I've had once or twice where that happens, and I'm glad that really early on I saw somebody mention how to force quit applications. So,
Yes.
you press both buttons for a couple seconds and you get that force quit menu that pops up, and you're like, okay, I don't know where it is, but if I force quit it and then relaunch it, it's going to appear here in front of
Yeah.
me. So,
Something that struck me is this is one of the only Apple devices that I'm not going to have muted. Like I hear all the system notification sounds, and you have this audio experience, which I don't have in any of the Watch, iPhone, or iPad, because I have those muted. It struck me that this is unique to this platform. That most platforms you do mute.
yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but it's absolutely true. You know, have gotten used to hearing those sounds, and if I'm anywhere, in public or even around my family, and I am listening to something and don't want to distract them, I'm going to put in my headphones anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you hear everything.
I wish I knew what the bleed through was like on those audio pod things. Because it's like at half volume. How far away do you need to be before that's silent?
I'm not. I don't know if I have an answer to that either, but I do know I was like watching a movie the other night while my wife was finishing up some things in the kitchen, and she had commented that she could hear like the whole thing.
Yeah.
So
Something that shocked me a bit is I've got the AirPod Pro's USB-C version, and I'll tell you, I've started movies before thinking I had my AirPods in and they weren't in, and I'll put them in, and it I can't tell a difference. Mostly audio speaking, people have said the speakers themselves sound a little bit better, but it's just impressive to me. Just like I can't tell if I don't if I'll like tap my ear. It's like, oh, nothing's in there right now. It's so well designed.
yeah, the spatial audio is really amazing coming out of those pods that are sitting outside of your ears. Um, and again, that plays to the staying present when you are around people and trying to use it. That you're not trying to use some transparency mode that's trying to blend your outside sounds
Yeah.
with the sounds in your ears. Like you're actually just hearing the things that are happening in the room, but also hearing this amazing surround sound spatial audio um, from the headset.
Have you done any FaceTime calls with the Persona, and what do you think of your Persona so far in version 1?
Um, when my persona's not moving, I'm pretty impressed at how much it looks like me.
Mm-hmm.
When I start moving my mouth and talking, that's where it loses it for me a bit, and where I'm not sure I could interact with anybody for any significant length of time through their persona. At least not until we get more used to the idea of it.
Yeah.
The first night I had it, my wife had gone out to dinner with some friends, and just for the fun of it, I FaceTimed her um, while she was out with them, and she knew what I was doing. She knew that I was calling her with my persona, but she answered, and she actually like showed it to her friends, and a lot of them, weren't really as aware as we are, obviously, of like
Right.
the Vision Pro coming out that day. And it took a second for them to realize that wasn't actually me. Um, so maybe in limited cases and in small doses, like maybe it is better than not having any video. But yeah, I haven't made any attempt to interact with one for any length of time.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna wait to do a FaceTime call with any family members until version 1.1 releases, which improves the Persona capture quite a bit, evidently.
Yeah, I think it for me it'll be, we really need to get like the mouth moving appropriately with you talking, and not just, I don't know, there's something about that as a human you can tell when somebody's mouth is making the words that are coming out of their mouth or not. Even when like the TV gets off by a fraction of a second from the audio, like it just sits weird with you.
Right. And for many years, we had the whole thing of Bluetooth headphones not matching the video properly. And that was the whole thing of trying to offset that appropriately. And we're finally at a place where that's good, thankfully. How has a comfort been for you with the headset? What band are you gravitating towards and all that?
Yeah, I've been using the solo loop and haven't had any issues. So I haven't even tried the dual loop band because I'm very happy with the
Oh,
solo
wow.
loop.
That's great.
I mean, it helps that I don't have any hair to mess up.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's
Maybe.
like I the dual loop. I don't have the thickest of hair, but it is knowing the Velcro getting in the hair and stuff and all that.
Yeah. But it's felt good the very first day, and maybe it was just an initial adjustment period. You know, I mean, on Friday I probably had it on for 4+ hours of total wearing time, and uh, I was feeling the weight a little bit in like the back of my neck that day. Since then, I just haven't really. It hasn't really bothered me. So I could see maybe really long working sessions, especially when you're first getting used to it. You know, you feel it,
Mm-hmm.
but I maybe it's just the quality of the experience is so good that like you very quickly just don't care,
Yeah.
and you're willing to deal with it. You know, and then when the Tim Cook article came out and he talked about like laying on his couch watching a movie, I was like, I hadn't even thought about that. Like I was just planning to sit at the couch and watch a movie. So I
Yeah.
tried it out. I laid on the couch and was like, well, now I'm not thinking about the weight at all
Right.
because now I'm laying back on this comfortable pillow and just looking up at the ceiling.
Yeah. One of the most fun things is just exploring my house and seeing what rooms are fun to work in now. Because like my kitchen's a totally different environment from my bedroom and down here in my office. Like it just it's fun to like explore what are the different rooms and positioning windows like in all the different spaces. Like have you explored your different environments and
Yeah, for sure. And the office that I work out of is actually about a couple miles away from my house, and it's an office that's just big enough for me to have my own desk in. But it gets me out of the house to focus on my work, and that's a much more constrained space than most of the spaces in my house. Um, so it has been interesting. I seem to personally find that I like it best if I can position windows in a way that they seem like they could actually be in the room.
okay,
Um,
you're not
so
going
in
through
my
the wall. Like I've been really enjoying making my surroundings a little bit transparent where if you put a window through a wall, your wall in front of you turns transparent. It's like kind of augmenting your real world to like let me make part of my house transparent, you know. Yeah.
yeah, I I do appreciate that it handles that use case really well, but then for me, like then I just it reminds me that it's not really there.
Yeah.
Whereas like if I can position things so that they fit in the room, then it feels like they're there. Um, and but when I'm in a constrained space like my office, that's where I find the environments very useful.
Okay.
And like I'm 100% sure that first time I get on an airplane, I'm going to immediately click into an environment
Absolutely.
because the thing the environment gets you more than like a pretty place to look at, it gets you this wide open space where then you can put the windows wherever you want and as far away from you as feels comfortable without it feeling like it's interfering or uh, breaking through the illusion that it's in your actual environment.
Do you have a favorite environment so far?
Um, my favorite is Hana Lock.
Yeah,
I
the
knew I was going to
Hawaiian
butcher that word.
volcano.
The Hawaiian
Haleakala.
volcano.
Yeah.
Yes, I knew I was going to butcher it. Um, partially because that's where my wife went on our honeymoon. Was to Maui, and we drove up to that volcano, and I have pictures of me driving a convertible with the clouds below me. So there's memories attached to that place, although the perspective in the environment in the Vision Pro environment is not a perspective you get as a tourist, you know, sitting right on the edge of the crater there. But you know, I really enjoy that one. My second favorite's probably Mount Hood, but for similar reasons. In that the weekend right before the world shut down in the pandemic, my wife and I were skiing on Mount Hood. So, I like that these are real places, and if you have a connection to them, it can make it more meaningful to sit and be there.
The moon is less meaningful. You've not yet been to the moon.
I will say the first time I entered the moon environment is the only time I felt any amount of like unease or nausea while wearing the Vision Pro. And I've decided it was just my brain saying, this is not a place I should be. It wasn't that it looked unrealistic. It was that it looked too realistic. So I've settled into occasionally revisiting it, and it's not been a problem after that first experience. But I think it was so realistic that my brain was like, this is not somewhere that I'm supposed to be sitting. Yeah.
My one hope in the future is that they'll allow windows to get even smaller. Like iPad apps cannot size down to iPhone apps in this OS. Vision OS apps can't get super small. Like I'd love to have like 10 windows kind of reasonably smallish size versus these bigger windows, which is harder to have a bunch of them around you in that way.
Yeah, I have to assume some of that is based off of like interaction sizes,
with eye tracking, it'd be harder to work with that.
Yeah. Because like the physical size of things that we tap on our phone or even on our iPad as compared to the size they need to be to accurately tap on them in Vision Pro. I think that's going to be a unique challenge. Hopefully, as they improve vision tracking, we can move more in that direction. Yeah.
How has the eye tracking been for you so far? Like, is everything hitting properly as you're trying to navigate the interface?
Generally speaking, I did after a day and a half or two, I did recalibrate it just to get it even more accurate, partially because I was getting more used to looking directly at things. One of the early challenges I had is, especially with the keyboard when it pops up in front of you, is realizing that often when you're interacting with your computer or even a physical keyboard or your iPad, you look at something long enough to like locate where you should tap, but then during the action of tapping, you don't actually continue to look at it.
No,
you look at the next thing because your eyes are like a step ahead of your fingers, that was a bit of a learning curve for me in that I had to continue to stare at something until I saw it be selected, and see the tap gesture like register. That's another thing that theoretically I suppose Apple could deal with in the software and the operating system. I recall with the iPhone keyboard, they did some interesting things where like the tapping didn't actually have to be super accurate because they were able to like tell the intent, or like there was something fundamental about like the difference between where we think we're tapping versus where we're actually physically tapping, and they've accounted for all of that. So I'm a little curious if when we get Vision 2, Vision 3, when we get these future versions of the operating system, might they be able to say, well, you were looking at this letter when you started the tapping motion, and even though you looked away at the last second, we still know that that's the letter you meant to tap on. It might be interesting to see if they can actually kind of catch up to that.
Yeah. As far as apps in your space, are you finding any like mini apps useful? Like I noticed right away, it's really hard to find the time in this thing. So I downloaded this app that has the time along with the little battery icon with how much charge is in the headset. Are there any little smaller window kind of accessory apps you found useful so far?
The one I've probably used the most often is actually just the music app. Playing music and then putting it in the mini player. I've never been like a mini player person on my computer but it really makes sense in the Vision Pro to say, I have my music and I'm just going to take the small controls and put them off to the side. So I know where they are when I want them, but they don't need to be in front of me all the time.
Is there a special way to get into the mini player? Because I can't make that music window terribly small.
So if you look at the artwork and
Uh-huh.
the playing bar and tap there, it actually switches to a mini player.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. So I believe that's a similar interaction to how it works on the Mac, if I'm remembering correctly, which is part of what made me think to
Yeah.
try it. So yeah, and then it does give you like this nice smaller square window that you can move. And actually, if you're not interacting with it, it just shows like the album artwork. And then when you turn to look at it and interact with it, similar to how when you're watching video, the controls go away until you tap on the video. It does the same thing with that. So like the artwork is off to the side, and when you look at it and tap, then you get the play controls showing up again.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
One thing I've noticed is I need to make sure I don't when I'm tapping, I'm not like over tapping in like in a painful way where it's like yeah, light tap does the trick. How have you been learning to the gestures and adapting to what you actually need to do versus
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of like, there's been, trying to think of specific examples. I actually think the iPad, I had some of that when it first came out. I used to like press, and it was like creating stress on my hand.
yeah.
And especially like if I was playing a game where the main interaction was tapping your thumb at an appropriate moment, like I would like wear out the muscles in my hand and tire them out. And you had to get used to the idea that you were just really just needed to touch the glass. You didn't need to apply physical force.
Yeah, especially if you
Um,
had the old capacitive touchscreens pre iPhone where you really did have that
yes.
you had to really bang that screen to get a response.
Of course, then Apple gave us actual Force Touch and taught us all that we did need to press at certain times. And then they took it away, and now we don't need to, but we still do because we're used to it. But yeah, there's some of that. I The thing I actually ran into was the orientation of my hand. Um, it seemed like it was really natural for me to kind of have my hand facing downwards away from me, and then the Vision Pro had a harder time sensing my taps, which makes sense. Like if you look down at your hand in that position because you can't see the tap as well. So I had to kind of teach myself to rotate my hand so my thumbs were kind of upwards, so that the tapping motion was more visible to the cameras. But once I kind of made that adjustment, it became less of an issue.
What other experiences from Vision Pro Week 1 haven't we chatted about that are worth sharing?
Well, I had one interesting one right up front in that I went to enter my Apple ID password because obviously, with any Apple device, like the first thing you need to do is sign in your Apple
Yeah.
ID. My Apple ID password was randomly generated by 1Password, and it happened to include the grave accent character, which is, most engineers know it as a backtick.
Okay.
Um, and that character is nowhere to be found in the keyboard they give you for entering your password. Um, so that was an interesting initial hiccup because,
Yeah.
and then when I got into the system, typing other places, I could find it. You could go to the characters, part of the keyboard, and it was there. But for some reason, in that initial Apple ID sign in, it just did not exist. So I literally went and reset my Apple ID password to another randomly generated password, but I paid attention to it, whether it included that specific character, and then was able to sign into my Vision Pro. So that was a little bit of an initial surprise. I'm not really sure why you wouldn't make all the characters available when people are entering their passwords, but um, yes, the average consumer is probably not using that character in their password.
Yeah, something that caught me during setup was I use a different Apple ID from when I had Windows back in my childhood days from
Mm,
iTunes for all my media purchases. So I have a like a Google account that's linked to all my media purchases, and it does not ask you if you'd like to after you sign to your Apple ID. Would you like to sign to a different Apple ID for app downloads and all this other stuff? And I quickly realized, hey, I already own the Disney Plus app. Why is it asking me to get it again? Oh, I've been downloading all sorts of stuff with the wrong Apple ID here. So let me log into
yeah,
that. And yeah.
yeah, and it's clear, and that some of that I think is just version one of a new product. They're trying to cover the primary use cases, but then when you realize that you are an edge case, you know, and then you're like, okay, well, for version 1, this is on me. A couple years down the road, I'll be more upset if they haven't worked
And
out
then
this sort
you
of
helped me
thing.
identify the whole iMessage thing of I thought I looked through every setting in the settings app for iMessage and syncing of iCloud stuff, but you had to go buried in there, which I think it's the same place it's buried in iOS, to be frank. But I looked for I looked for it, couldn't find it. But yeah, indeed, you can sync your iMessages in the cloud. Thank God, because otherwise,
Yes, that was surprising. It was surprising to me that it wasn't on by default. Like,
I don't think it is on most devices. Honestly, yeah.
oh, maybe I just haven't set up a brand new device without restoring from a backup from somewhere else in a
Yeah,
long time.
but I'm glad it's there. I did enable full photo library sync, so now I'm using like 700 gigs of my 1 terabyte Vision Pro. I may turn that off at some point if I need more space to free up. But
Yeah, I just went with the base model Vision Pro because I'm operating on the assumption that I'm going to upgrade this thing every time they offer me a new one, so I
sure,
don't necessarily need the top of the line one.
yeah, my thought process going into it was this will probably be at least a 2 or 3 year device, and so I don't want to regret not having enough storage. I'm sure 256 is plenty if you're not like downloading your entire photo library to it and all that. But it's like, it's already 3,500. What's another 400, right?
Yeah, I also did actually look at my phone and my iPad for reference, and I've got the half gig iPhone, but I'm only using 125
Yeah,
gigabytes of that half terabyte. So like I yeah,
yeah.
I
No,
don't
it's
even really need as big of an iPhone as I have.
right. Yeah, no, it's such a quick tricky question. It's like, how often am I going to need to download these big 3D movies for on the go? Probably not super often. What am I taking most of my storage up on my iPhone? Podcast downloads most of the time, and so yeah, it's always a tricky question with that stuff.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
I am definitely gonna subscribe to the Apple Care. I think it seems like a thing to
Yeah,
do.
especially when you read that repairs could be a couple grand each.
Yeah,
You know, if you are in any way planning on actually using this and taking it places with you, it does seem like the wise thing to do.
for sure. Yeah. Did you end up getting the travel case?
I did, and I'm really happy I did. I'm sure there will be third parties that will come up with interesting solutions,
Mm-hmm.
but uh, obviously Apple has more experience with the actual device than anybody else to this point.
Yeah.
So I feel like they shipped a really good initial
Yeah,
product with the case.
I was impressed. The little thing that holds it has a little slider. You can change how far or deep it goes, which I found just very curious because like in what situations would you want to move it? I guess different headbands require different depths or whatnot.
That's my guess, and I do think there's some value in the fact that you can adjust it so that the device with the cover on is up against the end of the case.
Mm-hmm.
And then because the slider is adjusted correctly, it's not going to then
Jiggle.
jostle around
Yeah.
inside the case. So I do think that that's. I mean, yeah, it was an interesting thing to see, but when you think it through, you're like, oh yeah, this is going to like help prevent the glass of this thing from impacting just in normal movement.
Yeah. I got to make sure I have that to the edge like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the little bag. Like it's nice to be able to throw in the extra headband in there, and the battery compartment's super well designed. I've opted to just leave it plugged into the battery. Um, One reason is I think the metal piece from the battery cable could potentially scratch the headset.
Mm.
And it just seems easier to just, leave it plugged in.
Yeah, I've been unplugging mine. And then it seems like if you fold the cable in half and then do thirds from there, like it
Mm-hmm.
just fits really well under that strap.
Okay.
So I've been unplugging mine. I haven't been too concerned about the scratching, although I think that's a valid thing. The cover that goes over the glass really fits it really well.
That's
I've been
true.
impressed
Yeah,
with
it
that
goes
too.
over it pretty well. And I'm impressed by the structure of that face covering. Like it's when we saw the pictures, like, oh, they're giving us this little sock thing, but no, it's got a lot of
Yeah,
structure to it.
yeah, it does. When it's not on the device, it is the shape of the device. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do like the little accessory bag. I think that's a really simple but elegant solution to like the charger and the charging cable,
Mm-hmm.
which are, often with this sort of case, like where do I put my charger? Where do I put my charging cable? Like
Yeah, because you can put the brick in there too if you need it.
yeah, the bag itself actually has a little bit of structure to it as well. Like
Yeah, the bottom, right?
the bottom of it is,
Yeah.
circle, so it kind of stands up when you have it there, and you just
And
drop
you
things
can
in.
even zip the case shut and have the battery external, and plug it in some. If you want to have your Apple Vision Pro protected while charging the battery externally, you could totally do that with that case. The zipper kind of would go up around it or whatever.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but you're right.
Because I live in a house with a cat, so everything needs to be kind of like sealed up when not in use. Yeah.
I mean, I live in a house with a toddler, so
there you go.
Very similar.
Yes. Yes. Well, anything else from this first week, or any apps that you're excited to try out and get?
I mean, I'm most of my excitement's honestly for the future. I think that this is a really impressive version 1 device. I actually had someone messaging me today on Facebook, a friend of mine who is kind of curious about it, is not, is into tech things, but isn't somebody who's going to build apps for it. And they were like, I don't know, should I get one? They did the demo in the Apple Store, and they thought it was really impressive, and they're trying to justify the cost to themselves. And I did tell them, I was like, if you go into it thinking that it's a V1 device and you're getting it to have a glimpse of the future, then you're going to get every penny of what you paid for it. If you go in expecting it to be this polished final thing with this massive suite of apps, third-party applications that have been highly polished for this experience, we're not there yet. We're in week 1, but I think we're going to get there. And it seems like now that it's in everybody's hands, people have only gotten more excited about it. As excited as we were for the several months leading up to the release, it feels like now we're really building momentum towards something really exciting.
Yeah, because now that's out in the world, there can be iteration and software and things like in the early days of iPhone, Tweety developed the scroll to refresh. We'll be able to have developers develop. I believe developers can include custom hand gestures, and maybe Apple will see what a developer is doing and say, oh, let's use that system. Why? Because that's really smart. So we're in that phase of the early days. And another part why I love the beginning of the platform on the early days is you just see the version 1, the version 2 OS upgrades and be along for that journey and just experience how platform morphs and changes over time. Like, I feel like I have a different perspective on the iPhone, having it from the first one to now versus people that jumped on board with, iPhone 6 as their first iPhone, for instance,
Right. Yeah, the evolution over time. Well, and obviously, Apple's built a lot of credibility with the developer community that they are going to invest and are going to make it better. And honestly, there's, we know at this point that there are probably 10 features that they have tested that people inside of Apple were playing with before the announcement, or even since the announcement, that they just decided not to include in version 1 of the OS. So we don't even know what they've already been playing with that we just haven't seen yet.
Yeah, VisionOS 2 in June is going to be just wild to see what's in there. Because it could be some cool stuff.
Yeah. I'm really enjoying the rumors I'm hearing about multiple virtual displays from my Mac. That would be a real game changer for me.
Yeah, I do not have a personal Mac currently. This device really makes me want to have a laptop of some sort from Apple. Because it seems like just the perfect also input device in a lap format where you have a keyboard and trackpad all in one versus trying to jerry rig the huge Magic Trackpad 2 to a keyboard. Like the laptop seems so much better for that use case.
Yeah, I am a little interested when I get on a plane for the first time. Like, am I even going to bother like putting my screen all the way up? Like, do I just put the screen up enough to get my hands in there, and then
Exactly. Yeah.
throw the virtual display up in front of me
I mean,
inside the
I
Vision
would,
Pro?
because there's less of a worry of the person in front of you leaning back and damaging your laptop, which I hear is a thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I'm a large human, so
Yes.
often working on a laptop in a cramped space like that
Yeah,
isn't the most comfortable to begin with. So um, the idea that we can throw these things up in a virtual space is really exciting.
for sure. Well, I think that's brings us to the end of our discussion here. Lots more to dive into in future weeks, but this is kind of just a glimpse of week one with Apple Vision Pro. Exciting early days of a new platform.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, do you want to plug any places, Mastodon, or any places for people to follow you if you're so inclined?
Oh, I suppose I could. I am K Pfefferle, which is my last name, which makes is impossible to spell. So
Yes.
KPFEFFERLE at hachyderm.io is my Mastodon handle. Um, Same K Pfefferle username on GitHub for anybody that's inclined, but most of my work over there is front end JavaScript related at this juncture. None of my iOS stuff is really out in the open
Gotcha.
yet.
Yeah, I love the Mastodon server you're on. That's a fun one. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the I actually think it was the second one that I did, but I've been pretty happy there.
Yes. Do you manage that one yourself, or is that a public one?
No, so it's open. It's managed by a foundation actually. Um, so it is. There's like a board of people that manage it. So it's got actually like a governance structure built around it
Okay.
and things. But it's kind of tech focused, with a lot of really kind of inclusive community policies that I thought were positive things
Good.
that I
Yeah.
bought into. So it seemed like a good place. Feels like it's not Mastodon.social. It's not one of the big ones, but it's
Mm-hmm.
like maybe next tier below that. In that there's some real resources put behind it.
Yeah. I gotta
Yeah,
say, Mastodon's been great for Vision Pro, just developers and whatnot, but I've been very surprised. The Threads algorithm is just all Apple Vision Pro with some wild stuff going on over there. Like, I try to resist the Threads, but Threads, there's a lot of unique Apple Vision Pro talk and discussion going on there.
yeah. It might be interesting to observe over there a little bit. I just cannot get into algorithmic timelines. I mean, Facebook is obviously feeding me an algorithmic timeline, but I've been I was on Twitter for so long that Twitter's own app was a chronological timeline for such a long time, and then Twitterific and Tweetbot and all of those, and you know obviously I was a Tweetbot user and then switched to Ivory when we went to Mastodon. And for me, unless I have taken a vacation where I have been away from my devices for two or
right.
3 days and I'm like 2 days behind, I read my entire timeline.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Yeah.
So uh, I'm not saying I read every word of every tweet or toot, but you scroll through it and scan and look for interesting things. So yeah, anything that's built on the idea of an algorithmic timeline, I'm just like, I'm not going to spend as much.
Sure.
I'm not going to get as invested over there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, thank you, Kevin, for your time today. It's been great chatting and learning about your experiences so far with Vision Pro.
Yeah, it was fun. When my app gets to a point where not if, it's going to happen. When my app gets to a point where I'm more willing to talk about it, I'd be happy to to discuss that further once I'm ready to be more open. Right now, it's a very closed circle of people that are aware. Because the people that I have told in the community that I'm building for, they're like, yeah, you need to not tell people that. Like, and I'm not I hate like the NDAs or like stealth mode startups and things. Like, I'm usually not that type of person, but when you're building for a very close knit community of people where everybody knows everybody else,
mm-hmm.
and there's somebody that currently is the person you're trying to like knock off the perch,
I get it. And if you're developing an app
gotta,
like that idea, the idea of what you're doing, if it's 3 years away, I get it. Like, because another team could come in and use that same idea or whatnot.
Exactly. Yeah. They've got, especially when you're building something part-time, because I'm not spending 8 to 12 hours a day working on this idea. So I have to slow roll it, and I have to like try to keep it off of their radar as long as possible, so that by the time they find out I'm doing this, it's too late. Or at least I'm far enough out ahead that then I can stay ahead.
No, yeah, and we'll definitely chat when you are at that final neck of development, stage of development.
Yeah. Cool.
Thanks, Kevin.
I appreciate your time. Thanks for having me.
Well, that's my discussion with Kevin. My thanks to Kevin for his time recording this episode. My thanks to you for your time and attention tuning in. As a reminder, you can support the podcast at visionpros.fm/Patreon. My thanks to everyone that supports the podcast. It is very much appreciated. And with that, I'll talk to everyone again real soon.